What's going on, guys? It's Red Bull Tanker, and welcome back to Axis and Allies 1951 Europe. This is turn 2. Alright, so before we get started with a lot of maneuvering this turn, excuse me, let's go over some things. Alright, so because the Soviets only rolled for a tactical surprise, the Allies were no longer at a -1 for any of their ground or air forces, so they attacked and defended at their normal values. For the random event this turn, the random event went to the Soviets, and Soviet Tu-4s out of the Soviet Far East were able to use nuclear weapons against the U.S. West Coast, which cost the U.S. 10 IPC. So instead of having the 50 that they collected at the end of turn 1, they were reduced to 40 IPC this turn. Alright, going over, we'll start with the Soviets. Couple pretty big battles for the Soviets this turn. But first, as always, their purchases. Okay, so the Soviets had 90 IPC to spend. They repaired the factory in Hungary. They repaired the air base in Berlin. They bought 3 tanks in Warsaw. They bought 2 airborne and an air transport for Romania. They bought 2 more, on top of repairing the Hungary factory, they also bought 2 tanks for Hungary. And then they purchased, I have to get up there, up in Leningrad, they bought 2 Marines and a transport. And then finally down in the Caucasus, they bought 2 infantry. Alright, over to the combat. So like I said, a lot of heavy combat this turn. So we'll start, well, pretty much all of it was pretty much over here. Okay, so starting off, the combined Soviet forces from Stettin and Berlin went into West Germany. The totals for that battle going into the fight, so the Soviets went in with 21 infantry, 6 mech infantry, 7 artillery, 3 self-propelled guns, 10 tanks, 7 fighters, 2 tactical bombers, 2 jets, and 2 strategic bombers. For the defenders, NATO had 19 infantry, 5 artillery, 1 self-propelled gun, 10 tanks, 4 fighters, 1 tactical, and 1 jet. And then the U.S. had a token defense force of 2 infantry, 1 self-propelled gun, and 1 tank. Now, before combat really began, NATO scrambled 2 fighters and a jet out of Holland to try and intercept some of the Soviet Air Force units. Unfortunately, it was a rough air battle for NATO. They lost the 2 fighters and a jet and caused no damage to the Soviet Air Force. Alright, so for the first round of battle, now this is where, just like Operation Unthinkable, this is where AAA really earned their pay in this game. So AAA will fire at the beginning of every round of combat, so it's not just once and done. It's every round of combat, which always makes it difficult as the defender to choose whether you want to take your AAA as a casualty or if you want to try and keep it around and have it fire again. So for the first round of combat, the NATO AAA missed, did not get any hits. Then okay, well, I didn't do this by round. So round 1, the AAA missed. Round 2, the AAA shot down a Soviet fighter. And then on round 3, the AAA missed again. Total casualties, so the U.S. lost. So total casualties, the entire Allied force was destroyed. So for the U.S., once again, that was 2 infantry, a self-propelled gun, and a tank. For NATO, that was 19 infantry, 5 artillery, 1 self-propelled gun, 10 tanks, 2 AAA, 4 fighters, a tactical, and a jet. While Soviet losses were pretty heavy too. That was 21 infantry, 6 mechanized infantry, and the 7 artillery. However, the Germans were able to clear West Germany and open the way for that. All right, next battle came down here in Munich. Going into the fight, the Soviets had 6 infantry, 4 airborne, 5 mech infantry, 3 artillery, 6 tanks, 2 fighters, 1 jet, 1 strategic bomber. The U.S. had 8 infantry, 2 airborne, 4 artillery, 1 tank, and 1 tactical. And NATO had a token force of 3 infantry, 1 artillery, 2 tank, and 2 fighter. The U.S. did scramble... Well, hold on, I'll pull back a little bit. The U.S. did scramble 3 jets out of Reims to do battle in the air. The U.S. The U.S. was able to kill a Soviet jet at no... Or wait. No. The U.S. did not cause any casualties to the Soviets, but the Soviets were able to kill 1 U.S. jet. And then there was only 1 round of combat, and I'll explain why. You can kind of see 2 things in there in a second here. So after 1 round of combat, the U.S. AAA did shoot down a fighter. Casualties for the first round were NATO lost 3 infantry and 1 artillery. The Soviets lost 6 infantry, 4 airborne, and a mechanized infantry. And in this game, kind of like with Axis and Allies 1914, you can choose to stop combat and contest the zone if you think you can hold it. Or, so the attackers can either contest the zone they're attacking or retreat. So that rule from 1914 can be used in this game, in this version of the game. So the Soviets stopped their attack after 1 round and are now contesting Munich. Okay, then the Soviets attempted an amphibious assault on Denmark with a tank and an infantry. They had 2 cruisers for offshore bombardment, but they missed. And then for the actual landings, it was a disaster. The Soviets did get 1 Danish infantry. However, the return fire was murderous, and the infantry and tank were lost. And so the Soviets obviously had to call off the attack in Denmark. And we'll probably have to try again on another day. Alright, then the Soviets attacked down into Greece. This one was only a 1-rounder. I did not write who all went into this fight. I do apologize. But NATO did have a anti-aircraft gun. It missed. And then basically... It missed, and then the casualties were NATO lost 7 infantry, 1 artillery, 1 tank, and 1 AAA, and the Soviets only lost 2 infantry for their troubles. And Greece was taken. Okay, then the final Soviet attack was to finish off the Turkish defenders in Ankara. There was only 1 infantry there, and it was a trade-off, 1 infantry for 1 infantry, but now Turkey is now all in the hands of the Soviets. So that is going to cause some issues for the Allies. Non-combat. Again, the Soviets are just trying to get as many forces as they can west. Without all the nuclear destruction in the Sudetenland and Hungary and East Poland, now the area was a little bit more open for them to actually move through and get their forces west. And so then at the end of the turn, the Soviets were able to collect 104 IPC. NATO. Okay, NATO had 90 IPC to spend as well. They paid off the damage to the Normandy naval base and the Scottish naval base. They bought 4 infantry for Holland, an infantry and 3 tanks for Belgium, and then an infantry and 4 tanks in Paris. there was only one thing of combat. It was a little short-sighted, but NATO did attempt to launch a counterattack in Munich. Overall, the Soviet AAA missed the air units that went in, and the casualties ended up being the Soviets lost 4 mechanized infantry and 2 artillery. NATO lost 4 infantry, 3 mech infantry, and an artillery, and decided to halt their attack and keep the territory contested. Non-combats involved moving more units into Belgium, into Holland and Belgium, while bringing these 2 airborne units into Paris, moving the fleet back to Norway so it could get itself repaired, and also moving this battleship back to Toronto to be repaired at the naval base next turn as well. And so then at the end of the turn, NATO collected 76 IPC. All right, the U.S. So the U.S. had a okay-ish turn because they lost the 10 IPC because of the nuking of the West Coast. They had 40 to spend. They bought 2 infantry, 2 tanks, and 2 more transports, though I'm starting to think that that really wasn't needed anymore. But neither here or there. They saved 2 IPC, which I did not do, so I'm going to have to throw that on afterwards. Okay, the U.S. did 2 things of combat. These both were strategic bombing raids. The first one, as you could kind of see earlier, the U.S. used their B-49 out of Reims and launched a nuclear strike against West Poland. The Soviets did scramble 2 fighters and a tactical out of Stettin to try and halt the nuclear strike, since it was going in with 2 jets and the B-47. So they were hoping for, they had to get 3 ones in order to shoot all 3 planes down. But so during the battle, the Soviets ended up losing a fighter, and the 2 U.S. jets survived. And then AAA from the airfield took a shot at the B-47 and missed, which means the atomic bombing was successful. So when you do atomic bombs in this game, once it is successful, you will roll a dice. On a 1 or 2, 2 ground units are destroyed, and if there's a factory there, it is max damaged. Yeah, it is. So, and I screwed up at the beginning. So in this, for Operation Unthinkable, all facilities are, so airbase and naval bases have a max damage of 10, and then factories, again, like I said, their max damage is 20, or not 20, is double whatever the territory is worth. So, again, on a 1 or 2, it's 2 land units and a factory is damaged. 3 or 4 are air units and an air base. And then on a 5 or 6, it is naval units and a naval base. And the U.S. got lucky. They rolled a 3. So 2 Soviet strategic bombers were destroyed, along with the airfield receiving 10 damage. And then lastly, the U.S. took their B-29 out of Reims, used the fighter off of the U.S. carrier in the Mediterranean to act as cover, or to act as an escort, and they launched an attack against the Greek factory, currently controlled by the Soviets. The Soviets did scramble these 2 aircraft. However, for the air battle, no one got any hits for the scramble. So no one got any hits, so all the aircraft survived. The AAA fire missed, and then the B-29s hit for 5, but since Greece is only worth 2, the factory was only damaged up to 4. Alright, so then on the non-combat, these aircraft landed in Rome. The 2 jets from West Poland had to land in northern Italy or Turin. The B-47 with a long range decided to come here to the airfield at North Reims for its protection. The U.S. Brought more reinforcements off their queue and landed them in Belgium. The U.S. Did constitute the 89th Infantry Division, and you can't really see it, but that is the 3rd Armored Spearhead Division. So those are the 2 U.S. divisions in Belgium. The U.S. pulled back the 7th Army out of Munich because they realized that Reims was at the mercy of the Soviet forces here in Western Germany, and a clear route to Paris would have been open. So the 7th Army pulled back to defend that. They airlifted in 2 more AAA to really give the Soviets something to think about. And in Reims, along with the 101st Airborne Division, the U.S. constituted the 4th Infantry Division and the 3rd Infantry Division, and then this tank regiment is just attached to the ground pounders there. And let's see here, anything else? No, that's pretty much it for non-combats. So then, like I said, the U.S. dropped their reinforcements on their reinforcement queue, and at the end of the turn, they collected 40 IPC. All right, so going forward into turn 3, now we'll be able to do initiative rolls to see if the Soviets will maintain their momentum or if the Allies will get lucky and pull off winning the initiative and maybe getting a chance to get some licks in themselves. And then we continue to move on with the top row here of random events, and we'll see if the Allies can maybe catch a break with one of theirs. All right, so that is it for turn 2, and we will see you guys next time for turn 3. So until then, guys, as always, take care.